Homebrew games usually start as passion projects by fans, hobbyists, or indie devs who just want to make something fun. But every now and then, one of these small homegrown titles breaks out of its shell and becomes a full-fledged franchise. From Atari classics to Linux legends, today we're counting down 10 legal homebrew games that grew into proper gaming series. Halo 2600. Let's start with one that sounds completely wild. Halo on the Atari 2600. Yes, the same Atari 2600 from the early 80s. Halo 2600 was made by Ed Fries, who just happened to be the former vice president of game publishing at Microsoft. He wanted to challenge himself by reimagining the iconic Halo as if it had been made during the golden age of Atari. The result? A surprisingly fun little shooter where you control Master Chief in pixelated glory. It's blocky, it's basic, and it's weirdly charming. Microsoft actually gave the project its blessing, and it even got an official cartridge release. The coolest part? It captures the essence of Halo's combat and exploration with just a joystick and one button. Fans loved it, and collectors snapped up copies fast. Sure, it's short and repetitive, but as a nostalgia piece, Halo 2600 is an absolute win. Super Tux. If Mario had a penguin cousin, it'd be Super Tux. This Linux-based homebrew platformer was made as an open-source tribute to Super Mario Bros. You play as Tux, the Linux penguin mascot, on a mission to rescue his kidnapped girlfriend, Penny. It's adorable, charming, and packed with snowy levels, lava caves, and creative enemies. The art style is colorful, yet simple, and the music gives off that cheerful, old-school Nintendo vibe that instantly feels familiar. Super Tux has come a long way since its 2003 debut. Over the years, it's added tons of new mechanics, ice physics, power-ups, hidden collectibles, and a level editor that lets players design and share their own worlds. It's constantly updated, has multiple worlds, and even got a sequel, Super Tux 2, which introduced better graphics, improved level design, and new enemies. The community keeps it alive with new levels and ports to everything from Android phones to Raspberry Pi. There are even fan expansions with story-driven campaigns and speedrun challenges. The gameplay is simple and nostalgic, though some might find the physics a bit floaty or the difficulty uneven in later stages. Still, the game's charm and dedication to open-source ideals make it a standout. Cave Story, Dukutsu Monogatari. This one's legendary. Cave Story was developed by one man, Daisuke Pixel Amaya, over 5 long years of spare time dedication. Released for free in 2004, it took the internet by storm almost immediately, becoming a word-of-mouth sensation on forums and early gaming websites. It's a 2D action platformer with incredibly tight controls, deep lore, and multiple endings that reward exploration. You play as a robot named Quote, who wakes up in a strange cave with no memory and slowly uncovers the tragic and surprisingly emotional story of the Mamiga rabbit-like creatures caught in a deadly conflict. Cave Story's blend of storytelling, pixel-perfect gameplay, and catchy soundtrack inspired a whole wave of indie developers. It's often credited as the blueprint for the modern indie boom, paving the way for later hits like Celeste, Shovel Knight, and Hollow Knight. Over the years, it's been ported to just about everything Switch, 3DS, PC, and even the Wii, and got several commercial versions including Cave Story Plus and Cave Story 3D. Each re-release added new modes, remastered graphics, or quality of life tweaks, giving players more reasons to revisit the game. The soundtrack, created entirely by Amaya himself, is still considered one of the best in indie gaming, full of nostalgic chiptune energy. The only downside? Some players feel that the newer versions lose a bit of the charm and simplicity of the original freeware release. La Mulana. La Mulana started as a brutally difficult freeware homage to MSX-era adventure games. You play as Lameza Kasugi, an archaeologist exploring ancient ruins filled with lethal traps, cryptic puzzles, and ruthless bosses. Each area feels like a labyrinth of death, where even reading ancient tablets can trigger hidden mechanisms or summon mythological creatures. What made La Mulana special was its respect for the player's intellect. It didn't spoon-feed clues or simplify logic puzzles. Every discovery felt earned, every victory hard-won. Due to its popularity, the developers remade the game with updated visuals, smoother controls, and more accessible mechanics. The remake was such a success that it led to La Mulana 2, expanding the lore, adding new ruins, and refining its puzzle design while keeping that same hardcore challenge. The community embraced it with enthusiasm, creating mods, fan art, and detailed wiki pages decoding every riddle. Today, the La Mulana series stands as one of the few examples of a freeware homebrew evolving into a respected commercial franchise with consistent fan devotion. Streets of Rage Remake, Bomber Games. When Bomber Games released Streets of Rage Remake, it wasn't just a fan tribute, it was a labor of love that reignited global interest in Sega's iconic beat-em-up series. The team spent years painstakingly rebuilding all three original games, adding new characters, branching storylines, enhanced graphics, and dozens of remixed soundtracks, while ensuring the classic side-scrolling combat stayed tight and responsive. The remake even incorporated unlockable modes, bonus challenges, and extra hidden content that encouraged exploration and replayability, giving longtime fans plenty to enjoy. The game's quality was so high that many players initially assumed it had official backing. Despite Sega's initial takedowns due to copyright concerns, fan enthusiasm, and media attention highlighted the dedication behind the project, ultimately fueling renewed interest in the franchise and inspiring Sega's official Streets of Rage 4. Beyond the remake itself, the project fostered a sense of community among fans, with forums, guides, and fan-made tutorials celebrating the game's mechanics and secrets. The Bomber Games remake remains an underground legend, a masterclass in what fan dedication and talent can achieve even without corporate backing. Relentless. Originally designed for the Amstrad CPC, Relentless brought fast-paced shooter mechanics to 8-bit hardware. Players controlled a small ship, navigating through swarms of enemies, tricky patterns, and explosive obstacles. Paul Kuistra, its creator, continually refined the game over the years, upgrading visuals, tightening controls, and eventually releasing sequels and ports for systems like the Commodore 64. The game also introduced features like weapon upgrades, boss battles, and hidden power-ups that encouraged exploration and replay. What set Relentless apart was how professional and polished it felt for a homebrew title. The crisp design, smooth animation, and fluid gameplay made it feel like a lost classic from the console's golden age. Its difficulty curve was challenging but fair, rewarding practice and mastery, which drew hardcore retro fans and speedrunners alike. Community involvement also helped keep it alive, with fan-made levels, mods, and guides enhancing the original experience. Its sequels and ports proved that even a niche homebrew could maintain a dedicated following across multiple systems. Volgar the Viking. Volgar the Viking is a love letter to 16-bit action platformers like Ghosts and Goblins and Rastan. Developed by Crazy Viking Studios, it delivers punishing combat, precise jumps, and an unrelenting old-school challenge. Players face relentless enemies, spikes, and environmental hazards, requiring split-second timing and memorization of level layouts. Its difficulty is infamous, but the fairness of its design keeps players coming back, creating a rewarding sense of accomplishment. Initially launched as a small-scale indie, it exploded in popularity for its blend of brutal difficulty, tight controls, and authentic retro aesthetics. With ports across PC, consoles, and handhelds, and the release of Vulgar 2 in 2023, the series expanded its universe, adding new enemies, mechanics, and even optional bonus areas for experienced players. The sequel retained the original's hardcore charm while introducing modern improvements like smoother animations, better balancing, and more diverse weapons. Community engagement also played a key role, with fan reviews, speedrun competitions, and streaming coverage helping to grow its reputation. While not for the faint of heart, it embodies the hardcore spirit of retro gaming. Teeter Torture. Teeter Torture is a name many people haven't heard before, but it's still pretty special. It was first made in the 1980s by Larry Clegg, an engineer who worked at Bally Midway. He built it as a homebrew arcade-style game just for fun. It never got an official release back then, but decades later, fans found copies and worked hard to rebuild and share it with everyone. Thanks to those fans, the game has been preserved so that new generations can enjoy it today. In the game, you have to keep enemies balanced on moving platforms while protecting your base from attacks. It's kind of like juggling, but with aliens and lasers. The mix of balancing and shooting feels surprisingly clever for its time, and even now it's fun to play. The preservation of Teeter Torture got people excited about this kind of creative game again. Some developers were even inspired to make new games with similar balancing ideas. It may not have turned into a big franchise with sequels and spin-offs, but its revival and influence helped it find a lasting place in retro gaming history. Princess Rescue. Princess Rescue is an Atari 2600 homebrew that's basically a reimagining of Super Mario Bros., but with legal tweaks and Atari flair. You play as a brave knight rescuing a princess, hopping over pits, collecting coins, and bopping enemies. It's shockingly impressive considering the hardware's limitations, especially given how smoothly it plays on such an old system. The jumping feels tight, the level design is creative, and the bright colors make it pop on screen in a way few Atari games ever did. The project caught massive attention for how closely it mimicked Nintendo's platforming feel while staying within fair use limits. The developer, Chris Spry, worked hard to make something fun and nostalgic without crossing legal lines, which isn't easy when you're paying tribute to one of gaming's most famous titles. He followed it up with sequels and even inspired a wave of other demake creators to take modern hits and turn them into old-school games for consoles like the Atari and Commodore 64. Some people felt it was too close to Mario for comfort, and it did stir up some copyright discussions, but overall, the community praised it for its creativity and charm. Psycho Soldier / SNK's fan, Homebrew Roots. SNK is one of the biggest names in gaming now, but the company's early days were filled with the same creative energy that drives homebrew developers. Back when SNK was still experimenting, many of its early creators and fans made their own small projects, game ideas, and prototypes for fun. These experiments helped shape what would later become famous franchises like King of Fighters, Metal Slug, and Psycho Soldier. The team often shared concepts, reused old code, and tested wild ideas, creating a kind of open, creative lab inside SNK before game development was even formalized. Psycho Soldier stood out because it had one of the first ever vocal theme songs in a video game, a bold move at the time. Players loved the combination of intense side-scrolling action and upbeat music. Over time, the company's willingness to let fan ideas and smaller indie-style projects flourish created a whole ecosystem of talent. Sure, there were some legal gray areas at the start, with fans building off SNK's early works unofficially, but the overall result was positive. Marvelous verdict. So, from free experiments to fully recognized franchises, these games prove that passion and creativity can go a long way. Some started as tiny projects on old consoles, others as tributes to classics, but they all made gaming history in their own way. So the next time you're tinkering with a game idea, remember, you might just create the next big thing. That's it for today, guys. Remember to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content, and we'll see you next time.